Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us on iTunes right now, please go and leave a 5-star review. For example, this is a really funny review. It's from D Swank. The subject of the review is Pretty Lady, because already this is a great review. So I've listened to you since you were on Tinfoil Hat. I've been a, quote, conspiracy lady since 2007 and not a fan with my family or coworkers. I would love to connect with you. Being a lady and a conspiracy lady, I think we can make magic happen. Ooh, this sounds maybe sexual. I'm currently opting out of the vaccine. I work for a plastic surgeon and they are trying to jab us. I also see the push towards transgender in my field with all the emails coming in for female to male top surgery and tracheal Adam's apple shaving. Lady, we could talk for days. Guess I'll listen if you want to reach out. Warmest regards, Dana. Well, thank you, Dana. Oh my gosh, that was almost like a personal email. Thank you so much for the review. Yes. This episode is brought to you by One Soul. I'm very excited to have them on as a sponsor. They've been featured on Shark Tank. They, I think, were featured on ABC. They were voted like best product. It's basically, this is a pretty amazing, and I can totally understand why they were on Shark Tank. It's basically like the perfect traveling shoe is One Soul. So, I mean, the gals listening, we know what it's like. Remember traveling, remember going places. Basically, One Soul fixes that issue of like, oh, I'm trying to bring 3-4 pairs of shoes on this trip because not all my dresses are black, not all my outfits are, you know what I mean? Like they have, so basically One Soul, it's just this one sole and a bunch of different interchangeable tops. You can have anything, any pattern, any photo printed to these interchangeable shoe tops here. And they're just known for basically this neoprene material, which basically fits your foot like a glove. And if you go to onesoulshoe.com and use the promo code CMP, you're going to get 25% off of your whole order. I really like, this is great. Like I think I'm just going to buy these for like all the ladies in my life, because basically here, they gave me a sample. You're like, bam, I got to switch. I got to go to dinner. You just like whip this thing off willy-nilly. It's just the sole. And then you can put this Trump sole, this Trump cover on it if you want. And then, just hope nobody throws you out of the restaurant. No, I'm kidding. This is great. It's like so easy and chill. So go to onesoul.com. Get yourself a pair today. Get it for 25% off. Use the promo code CMP, boys and girls. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Cushy Dreams. Go to cushydreams.com and use the promo code CMP. You're going to get 20% off of your entire order. I am personally, it's very high quality CBD products. I don't know if you guys have ever tried it, but they offer it in 2 different ways. They have these pre-rolled sort of joints here, and they also have bud, which comes like in these vacuum sealed little tins. So if you're not like the smoke a bowl type person, that's why I really prefer these like little joints, because they're very tidy and ladylike, and they come in these like fabulous little 5-packs. It's high quality CBD. It's legal in all 50 states, ships right to your door. It's grown here in the USA. Cushy Dreams is obsessed with quality. They're constantly doing tests for compliance and purity. Each batch is slow grown to ensure flavor and cannabinoids. And for me, it's really great. It just completely relaxes me without going to La La Land. There's like 0.0 or 0.3% THC. It's like, you're not feeling any of the effects of like weed. You're not getting high at all, even though it looks, feels, smells just like weed. It's not. It's great for me and my anxiety. It calms down my body and mind. I feel the effects within minutes. So for all of my CMP listeners, go to cushydreams.com, use the promo code CMP. You're going to get 20% off of your whole order plus free shipping. So thrilling. Before I bring on my fabulous guests, I have a couple of dates. Yes, that's right. Your girl is doing stand-up back on the road again. February 19th and 20th, I'm going to be at Hyenas in Dallas. And then on February 26th, Comedians of the Compound is coming to Royersford, Pennsylvania, to the SoulJoel Comedy Club. So check that out. That'll be me, Aaron Berg, Gino Bisconti, all the rest of the guys that you know and love from Compound Media. And then on February 28th, I'm going to be at the Stress Factory in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And then I got a couple of dates in Florida that I'm happy to tell you guys about. April 30th, I'll be at the Lake Park Black Box Theater in Palm Beach. And May 1st, the Boca Black Box Theater in Boca Raton. That'll be with my buddy Tim Young. We're going to be doing kind of like a comedian free speech tour. So I have more dates coming up with him that I'm so thrilled about. I cannot wait to get out on the road, fight for free speech, make people laugh while we're doing it. Speaking of laughing, no, I'm very excited for these guests here today. Our first guest, dun, 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 he's an author. He's a former Force Recon Marine and pro MMA champion. He actually had 8 deployments to Afghanistan. He is the author of this fabulous book that I haven't been able to put down, An Unfair Advantage, Victory in the Midst of Battle. Chad Robichaux, how are you?
Good, Chrissie. Thanks for having me on.
I am so thrilled to have pronounced your name correctly. And you know him, you love him. If you've been watching my podcast, you know this guy. You love this guy. He's the host of The Sharpe Way. He ran for governor 2 years ago. He's my favorite person to talk shit about Cuomo with. He's handsome. He also was a Marine, just like our buddy Chad here. It's Larry Sharpe.
I am here. Thank you so much for having me. But I want to be forward. I was a peacetime Marine. I was Marine in the 80s. We didn't have much going on back then. So yes, I'm a little bit of an old man. That's okay. All good.
Oh, well,
all good, yeah.
You don't look it, girl. You don't look it. So I'm so excited to have you both here. There's so much to talk. There's so much to talk to you about, Chad.
The veterans issues are huge.
Yeah,
they just are. They're just massive. Chad is hitting them from one level. I'm hitting them from another, and they're all huge. Generally, from I've seen, the great part of what Chad does is he's trying to get people to have some kind of purpose. He's trying to get these guys who come back who are lost, trying to find some purpose. And I often will pick those guys up and say, all right, now that you got some purpose back in your life, let me give you some tools to get yourself back into the job field, to give yourself some work, right? So I think we're hitting from different sides, but I think we care about the same people.
It's all one mission, Larry. I mean, it's so important. You know, so many of our military warriors, like you said, you're peacetime. 20 years now, we've been a nation at war, and the media has been hijacked by political topics, and we really don't pay attention to how much our military's out there, still to this day deployed. And I went in, I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan. By the way, Larry, 4 Marines in my family. My father was a Marine who served in Vietnam.
Wow.
I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan. I have 2 sons that are Marines, and one of them went to Afghanistan. And so we talk about military being at war like for a long time. My son served in the same war in Afghanistan that I did. That's insane.
Yes.
And and that's come at a cost. And that cost has really been, 20 plus suicides a day, 80% divorce rates, 30 to 40% of our warriors being diagnosed with PTSD and dealing with, panic attacks and just ideations of suicide and all these things. So we have to come together and bring different things to the table to get them well and get them back contributing to our communities again.
Well, the thing you brought up just now, which no one brings up except guys like you, is the family life, right? We are so worried about the individual Marine, or soldier, sailor, airman, killing themselves, which of course is terrible. But you and I both know their journey's over. It's the survivors that pay once they're gone, right? Once you've sadly, put the shotgun in your mouth, which that's often how we go, a pistol in the mouth, or a rifle in the mouth. When it happens, the survivors are the ones who pay the worst price. The families pay even worse. How come I couldn't help him or her? What couldn't I do? Or the children who are left behind, or the parents who thought, oh, my kid came back from Afghanistan, so now I'm good. He's back. Now I'm good because he's come back. And now to lose him afterwards is extra devastating.
It is. And I mean, it's, especially we talk about the spouses and the parents, the children. We've worked with a lot of spouses at our program, Mighty Oaks Foundation. Probably one of the most horrific stories I've heard. And this lady I speak at a lot of churches and trying to reach out to communities. And usually when I speak, I'm let them know about Mighty Oaks program, how it's free. And there's always that wife that nudges their husband, like, hey, this is you. And Heather, nudged her husband, and his name was Pete. He's a Marine, and he had been in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he decided, what many military people would say, hey, somebody needs that more than me, so I'm not going to take a spot. Here we go. And 6 months later, we got a call from the pastor of that church, and he's like, hey, just informing me that Pete had stood in the back of the pickup truck, surrounded by police, and the last thing he said was, tell my wife I love her, and I'm doing this for her. And he pulled the trigger and killed himself. But and we were asked to go in and speak with the wife. And I remember talking to Heather and her sharing her story of how she went to the morgue and she put her head on her husband's chest and trying to wait for his heart to beat again, like she wanted to hear it. She just couldn't grasp that. And she said how his mom screamed, and she talks about how when she needs him at night now and all these things, it's not, he thought it was gonna be better. Tell my wife I love her and I'm doing this for her. He thought he was gonna make her situation better, but he didn't. He made her situation worse. And she said something that really stuck with me. The suicide doesn't take away your pain. It just transfers it to those you love. And there's so many people, when you think of 20 a day, there's so many families that are just left in the wake of devastation from that.
Yeah, for 20 veterans who commit suicide, that's at least 100 people who are now in more pain. At least, right? Every single day. But I love what you just brought, the idea of the modesty. Modesty is killing us, man. And not just at that level of not getting help, which is insane. I see it so much. I would work with the Yellow Ribbon Foundation or some other, charity and try to teach some of these guys some maybe networking skills or some resume building skills or some interviewing skills, things that now once they want to move forward, how do we now move them into the next realm or phase of their life? And the amount of people who wouldn't show up was insane. And it wasn't because they didn't want help. It's because, to your point, I don't need it. Someone else does. I don't need it. Someone else does. So they don't show up. So literally I have to have the first sergeant order them to show up to my class. Then they come in and they come in like this. Well, I don't want to be here, but I was ordered, so I'll show up. Meanwhile, they're taking notes feverishly, right? They're writing everything down. What else do I do now? Where do I go? So they're happy to be there, but they got to be ordered, to be there so they can kind of push back and go, okay, fine, I'll go because I was told to go because I don't want to take up someone else's spot or I don't need the help. The other thing is, you guys come out of Afghanistan, guys come out of Iraq, and to be forward, they're tough. They're badasses. They are. And they don't want to ask for help. They don't want to. They want to be able to be self-sufficient. They want to be strong. They want to stand tall. They want to buck up. I got it. They want to. So ordering them sometimes, it's as crazy as it sounds. To a civilian, that's insane to imagine. But to someone who's a veteran, sometimes ordering them by someone who they respect is sometimes the right answer. Now, I've given veterans orders, and I have no ability to order them anywhere. But I just give them orders anyway. And they sometimes follow them because, all right, fine, this crazy guy Larry said do it, I'll do it. And I think that the modesty piece is a critical piece.
Right. And it's like, are these folks or they're having a hard time accepting help? Is it a man thing? Is it a soldier thing? Is it both usually? Because it's like you have to have balls and be tough to serve at all in the military. So I don't know. It's like, it's almost like, does it go against the training?
I think it's both.
And it's the people to your left and right. I mean, that you want to be there for. You don't want to seem weak to them. So, like we were saying earlier, I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan, and I was special operations. I was part of a JSOC task force, with Joint Special Operations Command task force, working with the best guys you could possibly work with, and given the opportunity to serve in that capacity. When I started having my problems, I didn't want to speak up. It started with like frustration, anger. My anger was out of control, and that's not my nature. I mean, I could be a violent individual professionally, but usually I'm pretty stable. But I noticed my anger kind of getting out of control. So I would come home and I'd be just going off, like, breaking things, slamming doors, yelling at my wife and children. I remember my daughter had a birthday cake, and she said she didn't like the icing on her cake, and I flipped out and grabbed a handful of my little girl's cake and threw it against the wall and destroyed my little girl's birthday, and just like out of control. And like knowing that I was out of control, like that behavior, and eventually that anger and frustration started to manifest in these physiological symptoms. And I know you said earlier, Chrissie, you had anxiety, like these high levels of like anxiety start taking over. My arms would go numb, my face would go numb, my throat felt like it was swelling shut. And then I started having in Afghanistan, like in operations, I'd having like called disassociation, to where you almost like out of body experience. You could see yourself, almost like in a bird's eye view of yourself, like during some really intense moments. And then, towards the end, we had some really bad things happen. I had 10 team members killed. And 8 of them were Afghans. And, 10 of them were Afghan. 10 of them were Afghans. 12 team members were killed. And, a lot of people might not think it's as big of a deal, but these guys were my brothers. Like I was embedded in Afghan. I lived in their homes. I ate dinner with their families. I played soccer with their kids. I was there with them for like 3 years. So I would have died for these guys. And I believe they did die for me. And so when those guys were killed, I think if I was hanging on by a thread, that thread was broken. And I remember kind of snapping out of this like fog and realizing that I was making mistakes and putting people in danger. And I finally had to say something. And, before that, I just didn't want to say anything because I thought my peers would think I was weak. And I didn't want to seem weak to my peers. I wanted to be there for them. And then I knew if I went to mental health, being a special operator with a top secret clearance, if I went to mental health, I'd possibly lose my clearance. And so I just didn't want to get help for those reasons. And because of that, I let it just perpetuate until the wheels finally flew off. And I had to come home and was diagnosed with PTSD and faced, just a terrible downward spiral for a period of about 3 years.
What usually causes PTSD? It's like, and I'm sure just for people listening, like, do you necessarily have to kill someone in battle? Or it's like, to me, it seems like you could probably get it from a number of ways.
Sure, yeah. You don't have to go to combat to have PTSD. It's a traumatic incident. The way the PTSD is kind of commonly referred to as the body's normal response to an abnormal situation. So we see or do things, kind of witness or participate in something that we're never meant to see or participate in. And as someone of faith, like I believe those things we were never created or designed to do. We see things that we just can't doesn't register in a limbic system. And so it's stored as a traumatic event. And then all the sensories that are tied to that traumatic event, when those sensories are through our senses, through sight, touch, smell, particularly smell, like it's one of the biggest ones, it triggers your limbic system and your body will physiologically react to being in that moment again.
You find it in a way, it kind of rewires your brain.
Yeah.
And actually your top brain and your primate brain and your mammalian brain begin to shut down. They literally just shut down. You stop thinking, you just start reacting.
Yep. That shuts down. You go to your limbic system, which is at the bottom of your brain, which is like a very primal part of the human body. And that's where they have called the 4 F's: fight, flight, feed, or fornicate. It's like survival. And
that's a nice way to put it.
That's what I teach it in the professional realm. You fight to survive, you flee to survive, you feed to survive, and you fornicate, or the other F word, for the survival of your species.
Fertilize.
Fertilize.
Oh, I like that. Fertilize, Chris.
Another good word.
Yeah.
Good job.
So, like, and I'm sure a big challenge is getting, like, I say guys, I mean that, like, of course, could be guys and girls who serve, but like getting them to like realize they have PTSD, because I feel like a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm not, maybe some people don't want to own the title of it, or they just think this is a passing thing, or they see the title as weak, you should be able to overcome whatever.
The way I've been able to get any people to get it is by telling them it's time to own it, right? That you have to own it. And you find some people never want to even deal with it, but some will go, so I can own. Yeah, just own this, man. You got it. It's part of what you went through. It's part of who you are. Own this. And if you own it, you got a shot at getting past it. But if you don't own it, it's going to own you. Yeah. So you just got to own it.
And you're right. It will own you if you don't address it. Because like I said, when I came home and I got that diagnosis, at that point, there was no deciding anymore. It was, I crashed. I mean, like my panic attacks were so debilitating that I believed I was going to die. Like whenever I had them, it was like being handcuffed or chained at the bottom of a swimming pool when you're drowning. Like how desperate would you be for a breath of air, but you never drown. You're like that way. You're that way 24/7. It's just complete death. And then on top of that, I was dealing with the panic, and then I was completely ashamed because I felt like I totally failed. And I think a lot of guys deal with that. And then, my wife and my counselor tried to find something for me to do. And that's when Chrissie, when she introduced me, talked about my MMA career. I was already a professional MMA fighter on the side, and I've done martial arts. I'd say I did it since I was little, but I'm still little. I'm 5'4".
You'll get there. You've got a growth spurt coming.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. 45 years old now, it hadn't hit. But I got on those wrestling mats and started training, And I think a lot of people find like physical outlets are really healthy and good, but you could have medicine for being good. And you could abuse that medicine.
Yes.
And you could take anything that's good for you and abuse it. And I dove into that. I got successful in it, but I never got well. I ended up amassing an 18-2 professional record. I won a world title. I was fighting on television, all this stuff, but I never got better. So eventually, after 3 years of that, it came crashing down. My family and I separated, filed for divorce, and was in my apartment. And that's when I attempted to take my life. I would sit in my my closet. When me and my wife separated, I ended up signing up to fight in this big fight on Strike Force and Showtime. And I fought in this big fight in the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas, in front of 10,000 people. And when that fight was over, like I won the fight, but I ended up going back to my apartment. Like there was really nothing. I had trained for that fight, so I had something ahead of me before. You talk about purpose. When that fight was over, it was like, there's nothing.
Now what?
I'm leaving my family. My wife and kids are gone. There's nothing to train for. I just won this stupid fight. And of all the people that were there, my family wasn't there cheering me on. And I was just like this kind of just sobering moment. And I remember thinking like, maybe my family would be sad without me, but they'd be better off. And unfortunately, that same hopeless thought finds a home in the hearts of 20 plus veterans every day, and even more so outside the military. Unfortunately, my family would be sad without me. My friends would be sad without me, but they'll be better off. And I decided I was going to take my life. And I would sit in my closet in my apartment. I would put my family pictures around me, and I had a Glock 22 pistol, which is a 40 caliber pistol. And like you said, Larry, a lot of gunshot wounds, self-inflicted gunshot wounds. And, I try to build the courage up to pull that trigger. I'd even like position the pistol to my head, like making sure it's be fast. But every time I put that gun to my head, this overwhelming thought would like kind of just totally consume my mind. And I would play out in my mind, like who was going to find me? Because somebody put a gun side, somebody's going to find you missing. So who's going to find you? And the only person that had a key to my apartment besides me at that time was my son, Hunter, my oldest son. And I was like, thinking the thought of him finding me would be enough to pump the brakes. But the next day I was back at it again and trying to build up that courage to do it again. And ultimately it was one moment I was in that closet. My wife knocked on my door of my apartment, not my closet. And I don't know why I did this, but I think it was shame. When she knocked on the door, I didn't answer it, but when I heard her voice, I hid that pistol under a blanket. Let me like a little kid getting caught doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. We were ashamed. And I answered the door, and we got in this huge argument. And in the middle of the argument, she asked me a question that probably saved my life. It definitely changed my life. She asked me how I could do everything I did in the Marine Corps. She saw me become a recon Marine and how difficult it is to make it into that. And she saw me go do these deployments to Afghanistan and go to these crazy schools, train for these fights. And like when I would make weight for fights, like I would cut like 35 pounds and look like a Holocaust victim, like bones in my face, like the amount of discipline, like that I would have in my life. She's like, how can you do all of that? And when it comes to your family, you'll quit. And there's probably no more soul cutting word for me than to be called a quitter. And in that moment, I did something that's really important. And I think you kind of hit on this earlier, Larry. I made a decision that I finally made a decision that I'm going to get well.
Yep.
I didn't know how to do it at that time, but I just decided in that moment, okay, I'm going to get well.
When people are in a helpless state, we want to try to find three things for anyone to be happy. Three things for anyone. They have to feel loved, they have to feel respected, and then they have to have purpose. If you got three of those, you're happy. Now, if you have more money, it's easy to get those three, but it's not required to have money. You can do that with money or without, right? It's just usually easier if you have money. But either way, you want to get all three. If you got two, you're still in the game searching for the other one, right? That's the pursuit of happiness. If you got one, you're kind of in a bad spot, but you can still find the other two. When you have none of them, that's when you're hopeless. That's when you're in trouble, when you have none. And when your wife came to you and said, what about this? At that point, you were like, I'm going to own this. You took ownership and you said, I now have a purpose. Then you had to go off and feel loved and feel respected. And the funny part is, what people don't understand is when you're yelling at somebody, it actually means you care. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. And if she walked in that door and said, what's wrong with you? At least she still cared. Mm-hmm. It might not have been the same love that you had years ago, but there was still something there. She cared enough to come in and go, dude, what are you doing? Something.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a quitter. Is that a gun? No.
Exactly. No.
Crazy. No. Chad, it's so heartbreaking to listen to you. You're explaining like what you were going through, and the fact that you and all veterans, like how much you give to us, like how much you're willing to lay down our lives for the people who live in this country to protect us and defend our rights. And the fact that you go through this experience and you come back feeling that you're a burden on those around you, those who love you. It's like the opposite of how things should go. And
well, I try to tell people when they come back to now start to try to compare yourself to your new environment, right? The environment's new, right? When to what you said, Chad, you were making mistakes over there. You were afraid that if I made a mistake, someone's going to die. I mean, that's a whole different world. You make a mistake here, what's the worst that happens? You get fired. That's the worst that happens, right? People aren't going to die because you make a mistake because your spreadsheet was off. Right? The worst that happens, you get fired. You probably just get scolded by your boss and you move on. And that concept is a hard one. I remember I do a session when I deal with veterans and I try to help them to tell a success story that will, translate into the civilian world, translate to that young HR professional who's hearing you on the interview. And as I go through the room, often I find trouble. The vets don't want to tell success stories. They don't want to boast at all. They're so modest. And I remember one guy, I'm like fighting to pull teeth. And at one point, the guy says, he's a sailor. He goes, well, yeah, I saved the guy's life once. I'm like, are you crazy? That's an amazing story. Why wouldn't you tell a civilian? They don't save lives unless like a firefighter or something. They don't save lives. They have no idea what that's about. That's amazing to some 25-year-old HR clerk. They're loving that. And the best part is, you know what he wanted to be? A security guard. It's the perfect story for a security guard. You literally save lives and you want to be a security guard. And it took me probably 20 minutes to pull that story out of him because he was comparing himself to what veterans do. And saving someone's life, if you're in that world, that's just your job. That's what you do. That's not special, if that makes sense. A civilian doesn't get that, but a veteran goes, yeah, I get it. I remember a Marine who had Overwatch in Afghanistan. I'm sorry, no, it's Iraq. Overwatch in Iraq. And he went, I think his tour was 6 months, if not mistaken. It might have been 9, but I think it was 6. And he said in his 6 months of Overwatch, he was 100%. Not one IED went off that wasn't already planned. No one got hurt. No one got killed. Every convoy that went by, he was 100% Overwatch. And he wouldn't tell me that story. He's like, well, I'm doing my job. Do you know what 100% means to a civilian? We're lucky if we get 80% out of our workers. And you're going to give me 100%? Oh, my God, it's magical. And again, it goes back to the idea of veterans are comparing themselves to other veterans when they should be comparing themselves to the new world, the new environment. And it's very hard for someone to give them an actual transition.
Yeah.
Larry, I've saved somebody's life. I was a lifeguard and I pulled somebody out of the dive tank. It was a 15-year-old boy and then he grabbed my boobs. So that's what, not all heroes wear capes.
That's true. Some get their boobs grabbed. That's true. Yes.
I was like,
Some
is this
do.
an act? Chad, I was picking out interesting parts of your book. I just pulled my own headphones out. Okay. I thought this was a really interesting concept that you wrote here, Chad. It was like, it was the idea of veterans, like your hearts become hardened towards those who have not experienced what we have.
Yeah, I think we think that no one will understand us, and because we think that it's a big obstacle to get help, it's a big obstacle to interact with other people. I think that especially when I was deploying, I would not have any friends outside of the people I was deploying with. Not only military guys, but they had to be like in our unit, in the special operations field, but probably just guys I worked with. And so you just really become hard to the outside world. You think no one can really relate, and which is not true. People, and it's very harmful to your overall mental health. And for me, like in that moment when I go back to where I said I decided to get well, one of the things I realized right away, I'm so thankful I realized it, was one, I couldn't do it alone. And two, I couldn't do it with the people I was surrounded by, because I had took that concept you're talking about, Chrissie, and I systematically pushed accountability out of my life. I had put only people around me that told me what I wanted to hear. No one really that would tell me what I needed to hear. And so I had to get somebody to come into my life and speak into my life, speak truth and the right words, the right wisdom into my life. And I reached out. Actually, my wife reached out to the church she was going to, and I met a man named Steve Toth. And really helped me navigate a restoration of my faith, which was a big part of me. I remember sitting down. Met him at a coffee shop, at Starbucks coffee shop, and I had written like a 5-paragraph order, operational order for those in the military. If I was going to fix my life, and it was really good, and I was probably like super smug and proud of it. And I slid it over to him, and he told me I was going to fail. And he didn't even read it. I was like really offended. I was like, this guy's freaking rude. And he slides it over to me, and he taps on it, and he says, this thing doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God. I won't waste your time, and I won't let you waste mine. And I know this isn't a faith-based show or anything, but for me, like in my life, I had tried everything. I've been on medication. I've been through counseling. I've been through VA programs. I've had professional success as an MMA fighter and was making good money and had a good business. I tried all those things, and none of those things worked. And we have a saying at our foundation, at Mighty Oaks Foundation: if what you're doing isn't working, then why not try something different? And so everything I tried didn't work. So I gave this guy Steve a chance, and he not only did I kind of surrender my life to life of faith as a Christian, but he began to mentor me for about a year. And what I discovered in that process was pretty profound. I had discovered that all these things that had happened to me, as bad as some of those things were, and I shared some of them with you, as bad as those things were, those things didn't lead me to be in that closet with a pistol in my hand. What led me there were the choices I made in response to those things. And I never lost control of the ability to choose. And now with these kind of biblical mentoring and biblical life principles, I was like, okay, when I can't change. You said it earlier, Larry. I couldn't change what happened to me in my past. It happened, but I could change how I respond to it. And that seems so simple, but it was so empowering to me to know that I could change how I respond to it. And I didn't have to sounds cliche, but I didn't have to let my past define my future. And
yeah.
It was a different future moving forward. And through that, I found restoration in my family. My wife and I have been married 25 years now. I found restoration in my own brokenness. I found hope again for the first time in a very long time. And ultimately I found what we started off talking about, and that was purpose. That purpose really manifested in a really deep burden on my heart to reach other veterans. And that's what I've committed my life to since.
I remember something you brought up, which is biblical. So if anyone's listening is not religious, I apologize. Take the philosophy if you don't want to take the religion behind it. And that is you talk about the idea that God calls you and you're actually not qualified and God doesn't care. God calls you anyway, even though you're not qualified, that you have to do it anyway. You have a purpose. And that if you don't have one, God has a purpose for you. So take that one, right? There's a purpose for you, right? And you don't have to be qualified. And I think that concept is an amazing concept, that you can take on a purpose even if you're not qualified. And if you don't have one, there are others out there for you. You don't have to find one. There's other purposes out there for you. I think that, to me, when I heard you say that, I said, man, that's right in the money. Right on the money.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Chrissie, with what you do, you stand in front of people and entertain people. And Larry, we all are on here. We're professionals, right? But behind our mask, we're super insecure. I don't have to know you guys to know that, because we're just wired that way. We're insecure, and
no, I'm perfect. I'm perfect.
Me too. What are you talking about? I haven't gained any quarantine weight.
Not at all. I am perfect. I never make an error. Ever.
I would show you, but it's the camera.
Exactly. Yes.
We don't feel qualified to do what we do. We feel like people are judging us, and was that good enough? What'd you think? Was that funny? What did you laugh? We don't feel like we're qualified to do what we do, but what qualifies us most to do what we do is our life experiences, the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. And I look at the very things in my life that almost destroyed me, and literally almost destroyed me. I almost took my life. I almost lost my wife. Almost lost my kids. Look at the very things in my life that almost destroyed me. And that is those very same things, or the platform now that I've been able to speak to 150,000 active duty troops. I've written several books that I've given away 100,000 copies of my books. We started programs. We have these ranches around the country we bring veterans to. We pay for everything. We spend about $3.5 million a year paying for everything, flights, everything for these veterans. We've had 4,000 veterans come to these programs. I mean, all that has happened by leveraging the very same things that almost destroyed me. And so our experiences, the good and the bad, the successes and also the failures, or what qualifies us to do what we do, and when we share whatever talents and gifts and talents we have with the world.
Recovery is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Chad, you talk about your journey with your faith in your book here, which, by the way, Trump, Trump, like, as the top quote on here. Thank you for sharing your story. I extend my personal gratitude to you for your distinguished and steadfast service to our country. Great book. Trump. Good for you. You talk about your journey with your faith in here, and at one point you mentioned you're like, I kind of turned away from God because I thought that was for weak men or weak people. What was it for you that helped you like turn a corner on that and then see yourself or see religious people or men of God as actually the opposite?
Yeah, I always had this view, like people of faith, like Christian men, they were weak. I remember like going to church really just to bring my family to church, but I'm like, I'm not going to hang out with those guys or play softball with those. Like that just wasn't me, and I always just had this view. And I believe in a spiritual realm or spiritual. Again, this isn't a religious show, but like a spiritual warfare world of those good and evil. Then the evil would want us to believe that, being Christians or being a people of faith would be weak, because it takes us, particularly takes men out of the fight. And I believe I had to choose between masculinity and Christianity. And when I chose to not be a person of faith, I believe it left a giant hole inside of me that, through my experiences in Afghanistan and life, just filled that hole with anger and hate and bitterness. And the reconciliation of that was coming all the way to my rock bottom, and then having this interaction with Steve Toth, my mentor, who began to teach me what the Bible actually said about manhood, and reading biblical stories about like some real warriors in our history who are people of faith, who are just good models and example of people who are people of faith, but strong, and stood up and for what was right, and stood up for righteousness and fought. And actually, even on the battlefield, talk about like David, he wanted to win his wife's hand in marriage and went and slayed 200 Philistines and cut their foreskins off, like to win his wife's hand in marriage. There's some like brutal stories. I think one of the stories right there is about Ehud, the left-handed assassin that God called to free the people of Israel, and assassinated this king. I mean, that's like some really inspiring stories that spoke to me as a warrior and really helped me calibrate and understand what manhood was about. And that it wasn't weak to be a person of faith. In fact, it was actually strong.
I think you find strength in people of faith, even who are fighting battles that aren't on the battlefield either, right? You look at someone like Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, people of faith who aren't actually fighting on the battlefield, but are still fighting, but in a different way. So I think you find either one. Yeah,
principled fights are probably even more important than fights on the battlefield. And we need people like that. In fact, I'm working on another book right now with Thomas Nelson. It's in the presence of a warrior, and really talking about the masculinity of Jesus and how he fought, every day against the religious rule and against essentially some of the same things we're fighting against today.
And I want to know about his hair regimen. Like, I want to know about. Like,
he looked amazing.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I talk about. Is that one of the quotes I put in the book. I'm doing a manuscript right now. Is that he probably didn't have Vidal Sassoon flowing hair.
Yeah, probably not.
Calluses on his hands, and he walked like 30,000 miles in his life. They estimate it.
So his feet probably looked terrible.
Yeah, he was tough guy.
Well, the thing I bring up often when I talk about this is, Jesus said, "Turning the other cheek." Oh, I'm not going to Bible on you, Chrissie. Is it okay?
No,
okay.
I have most of my episodes. We don't even talk about any of this stuff. So it's
okay.
Good.
So look, again, if you're not religious, no worries. Take it, please, for the philosophy. If you're not a religious person, but when Jesus said, "Turning the other cheek," he wasn't saying, let me cower. That wasn't what he was saying. He was saying, I'm going to hold my ground. Yeah, you slap my cheek, and I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to say, I got another one. Are you that tough? You going to hit me again? I'm not going to fight back. But are you going to be that guy who's going to smack me? Or are you going to respect me and realize that I'm here to stand my ground? This is why guys like Gandhi and MLK talked about Jesus all the time. Because while Jesus wasn't an aggressive, he wasn't on the battlefield drawing his sword, he was still a fighter, and he stood his ground. And I think that this is another thing we can look at.
Yeah, and it's also not turning the other cheek for me is about like not giving away your power, like not like being kind of unflappable in that moment and be like, I'm not giving this person like who's maybe they're in a bad place right now. I'm not giving them the power to change like my chill, basically.
Absolutely.
Like, my ability to hold it together.
100%. Absolutely.
I liked in your book, Chad, that you talked about like when you were, I think you were talking about like the Afghan people that you were staying with, and you watched the election with them, and like you were like family, and it's interesting to me because like I think just through my like 20s and 30s, like you hear a lot of, I don't know if it's like anti-American rhetoric or more just like, oh, like Europe is cooler and better, and like I think just from like my times going abroad, I get the sense like America is not that important. But you actually like talk about the opposite. You're like, America really does make a difference in this world, and our role matters to others, because you were just so surprised. You're like, wow, we're on the other side of the world and they're watching the U.S. election. And I think that's a really good kind of, well, especially now, like with all the turmoil, I think that our country is going through, to not forget. I think it's easy when you live in this country to forget like kind of how important America is and how we are kind of leading an example.
Yeah. Honestly, in that moment, I was shocked. I'm in Afghanistan. I got invited to this Afghan party. And all these people it's like a Super Bowl party. There's food everywhere. It's people shoulder to shoulder packed in this room, and they're watching the presidential election 2004 of President Bush and John Kerry. And they were so worried that John Kerry would win because they were worried that it would pull U.S. troops out. And so when President Bush, when they stayed, I'd never seen this in the U.S. ever, like people that glued to TV for election. They stayed till the results were announced, and when Bush won, they were dancing and singing, and they were. I was excited too. I didn't want John Kerry to win, but I mean, they were so excited, and then what I wanted to know why. Like, why were they so excited? And they told me because they were worried that John Kerry would pull out troops, and they showed me. I got to see. I talked about that in that chapter, The Killing Pool. I got to see some of the previous.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah.
Some of the things that they got to show me and expose me to what the Taliban had done to them, the sexual molestation of little boys and little girls and women, and I mean, my buddy showed me this building that the women, when the Taliban came, these women were jumping off the roof of the building to get away, stop being raped by the Taliban.
Yeah, you can't really tell, but it's basically like, this caught my eye so much, Chad, because I was a diver for like 10 years growing up, like springboard. And so what you're looking at is basically like a platform diving setup, like an outdoor platform diving setup. Like you have 10, 7.5, 5, 3, and I don't know, maybe a couple other meter boards. And so you like came upon this pool, which is like, it's like the thing that does not belong in the middle
of Afghanistan, right?
In the middle of Afghanistan. I'm like, they have a diving team? I'm like, dang.
The Russians built it. Yeah. The Russians built it when they had overtook Kabul, and the Afghans, the Taliban, when they came there, they drained it, and they made a basically execution pit out of it. There was like a line of bullets on the deep end and a line of bullets on the shallow end, which is kind of morbid because they were lower. It looked like they would have been shooting children there, but there was this line of bullet holes in the walls. And then my buddy, there was also a steel noose hanging off one, I think the second tower. And my buddy said that when he was there, he remembers being there and them throwing people up the top into the bottom of the pool in the concrete, just like garbage, just tossing them and killing them there.
That's like, that's so unbelievable. Like that's, that people have seen, not only that this kind of stuff happened, but that people have just like saw it happening. It's, I don't know. It's
and too many were willing participants.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so you wonder when you talk about, back to your point, Chrissie, like America, when America's strong, the world is a safer place. I mean, America to me is the greatest nation in the world, but there's other places in the world that you go. I mean, I encourage everyone to travel the world and see other places and realize that don't live in this little bubble of America and not be exposed to the rest of the world. But while there is other great places in the world, America is on the global stage the most important country in the world, because it brings when America's strong, it brings stability to the world. And when these people were worried about the election, they were worried about us having a weaker president that will not be a strong presence against Taliban, and Taliban coming back in and doing that to them again. And I can tell you, I'm not in Afghanistan right now, but I can tell you right now, there's people around the world that are scared because of the change of leadership.
If you travel around the world, the one thing you find is, I've when I was in Marine Corps, I was in most of my time was in Japan, Korea, Philippines. I spent some time in China, and I've traveled to Europe a couple of times already, UK and Germany. And every time I go to these places, everybody knows who the American president is.
Right.
Whether it's the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, doesn't matter. They all know who the U.S. president is. But how many people know who is the current prime minister of Japan? Not many. Obviously, if Japanese, you do. But if you're not Japanese, a lot of people don't know who that person is, or who's the current prime minister of, of the UK. A lot of people don't know who that person is. But man, they know who the American president is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the epicenter of the world. And the world looks to us for strength and leadership.
And it's like, and you think like, why is that? Is because maybe it's because we have like what seems like more rights, more freedoms than other countries, or it's just like, is it our military? Like, how did we get to be the country that other countries look to?
Otto von Bismarck said this like 150 years ago. He said, Providence has protection for children and the United States. Like, we knew this over 100 years ago. The German chancellor knew this 100 years ago, right? When he was saying this, well, that's almost 20 years ago, whatever, 100 years ago, he was saying it. America is the place where everybody wants to come to. It's where we have so many connections to, right? So many people have a connection to this country, whether it's through things they buy, people they know, places they visited, media they've watched. There's so many connections to all the other countries.
Yeah, I don't believe it's the economy. I don't believe it's our military strength, all things that are great. I believe it's our Constitution is unlike any constitution anywhere in history. There's never been a constitution. There's never been the one to stand for as long as ours has stood either. I think the longest next to ours is probably like a decade or two. So the rights, the freedoms, the opportunities is what people are drawn to. I mean, people aren't coming in caravans to the southern border because of, to be protected by a strong military. They're coming for opportunity. They're not coming because of even the economy of America. They probably don't even know what that means. They're coming for opportunity and freedoms. And that's why we're at such a dangerous time. And right now, when those freedoms and opportunities are being, or literally being taken away at a very rapid rate.
Well, this goes to what, I know you've brought this up idea before of getting more veterans into the business community. And I'm a big fan of that. And most veterans, I think, don't even imagine that. They immediately think, well, if I'm out of they think one of two things. Okay, when I was in the Army, I was a truck driver, so I should now be a truck driver, which is not the right reason to be a truck driver, right? You should be a truck driver because you want to be a truck driver, not because you think the Army told you the only thing you're capable of doing, which often happens. Or the other thing is, I want to go from one brotherhood to another. So I leave the Marines and then I join the fire department or the sheriff's department or the corrections or whatever. You join another brotherhood. And I think we have to get more veterans to go, no, you can enter any part of our economy that you think you might want to get into, it's all open for you. And if you had more people in there, I think our capitalist society that so many people are angry about would actually be better if we had more veterans involved in it. The more veterans, I think, the better, right? Veterans, this, we do crazy things for hardly any money. We do it, right? It's just what we do, right? When I was in, the most I ever made, I think, was $18,000 a year. That was my highest salary ever, right? So I did a lot, and I was prepared to sacrifice my life like all the other veterans I know, and for $18,000 a year. So I think if you start getting more veterans in our society, we'll have more compassionate capitalism by default. It's just what will happen. We'll have more purposeful capitalism by default because that's who veterans are.
Yeah. And I think if you're willing to do crazy things for a small amount of money, you would also be really well suited to be a comedian. that's
there we go.
There we go.
There we go. You should have been a Marine, Chris. You see that?
Oh God, I can do like I feel like I don't know. I can only do push-ups like on my knees. I feel like I'd be laughed at.
That's what boot camp's for. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh my God. As long as they give me a cute pair of boots, I'm in.
That's all you need.
Right? That you get free boots. I imagine
you do get free boots. That's true.
And they're suede now, but they don't have they don't have different snap-on tops.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh my God. That's so funny.
You got to get your sponsor to sponsor Marine Corps boots, and now we're set.
Yes, that would be great. I forgot to ask this before we were talking more about the topic of PTSD. What are some things, like if there are any veterans like watching or listening to this and they're like, well, I don't know if I have like PTSD. Like, what are some, I don't know, like signs or hallmarks of having, like, how can somebody begin to recognize that this is what they have?
Well, I mean, you have all the anxiety symptoms. If they're starting to manifest in physiological symptoms, such as, where you're starting to have anxiety and nervousness and the numbness in your hands, and these are like the panic attack symptoms. But I would look before that. I would look for more things like the desire the irritability, the desire to isolate is probably the most dangerous path that people could go down. If you start feeling a desire to separate yourself from society, from people, from your friends and family, and then when people do try to break that barrier and engage, and you find yourself irritable and resistance to that, that's probably if I could pick one thing, I would say that. And then, maybe it's not PTSD, maybe it's just stress but I mean, regardless of what you want to label it as, those things need to be addressed in your life, and so you can be productive moving forward. Because we PTSD or not, we're not meant to do life alone, and we need to be in community with other people and not isolate ourselves from each other, especially in a time like this with COVID. That's these lockdowns have been, kind of quote President Trump, the cure can't be the solution can't be worse than the problem itself. The cure can't be worse than the problem, and it certainly has been. I mean, the suicide hotline is up 1,000% since lockdowns. 1,000%.
Wow. And nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
I am. Come on now, Chrissie.
Except for you,
been
Larry.
saying this for literally months. I've been saying this. I had a anti-lockdown plan literally last year, March. It is on for those of you watching, you go to Sharpeway YouTube page. It says COVID response videos. There's 10 of them. I gave the response, did not include lockdown, and I put it up in March of last year because I knew this was going to happen. Chad, you were 100% correct. These lockdowns are hurting us like there's no tomorrow. You're totally on the money again.
The active duty suicide rate attributed to lockdowns by the commanders in the military is up 35%.
Wow.
So,
wow. Well, I want to go to a thing you might want to look at. That's even before what Chad was talking about. If you find a certain thing, a certain event or time or something triggering unexplained anger, if you find that happening, there's a trigger, you might have anxiety, but you also might have PTSD. It's time to start. That should be something to start thinking. Why did I get so angry all of a sudden when this thing happened? Yeah. And can I really explain my anger? Or wow, I just really got angry. So I think that's one. A second one is if when you have that anger, you have a lot of regret from the anger. You start feeling the two worst feelings any human can feel are regret and betrayal. Those are the two worst that you can ever feel. Betrayal you rarely can handle because it's someone else, but regret's you, and that sometimes hurts even worse. Yeah. So if you start to feel regret from some anger or some action you took, that's a time to go talk to somebody and see, is it just a small issue you're having? It may not be PTSD, but if it isn't, handle that, or it might be PTSD.
I agree with that. You got to handle it, and look, there's so much help out there. I mean, especially for the veterans listening. There's help out there for everyone, but especially for the veterans listening. There's so much help, and it's this. I mean, it's 43,000 veterans nonprofits out there. I mean, ours, Mighty Oaks. I'll plug Mighty Oaks, mightyoaksprograms.org. Go on the website, do the application. We cover everything. We will fly you out to the program. We'll pay for the plane tickets. There's no cost at all. And we have a great aftercare program, and there's lots of organizations out there that help.
Aftercare is critical, man. So critical.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because we take them we have a 6-day camp. We have 5 different ranches that we bring our guys to in California, Virginia, Oklahoma, Ohio, and Montana, Texas. And we fly them there, and they spend 6 days with us. But that 6 days is intensive, but it's very important to stay plugged into aftercare afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And what could somebody expect like at these camps? Like what kind of like programs, or what kind of stuff do you do?
Well, I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. We have a peer-to-peer mentoring program. So all of our group leaders are alumni. So it's very important that they're not dealing directly with a clinician. There's good clinical programs, but we try not to be that. We want to be peer-to-peer. So it's other veterans who have been through a program and trained to do leadership. So we'll teach 14 different classes on life, kind of practical life issues, such as like character. What's character look like? What's managing your time look like? You think what's managing your time have to do with PTSD? It has everything to do. If you're trying to fit 26 hours in a 24-hour day,
yes,
it's going to add stress to your life. So and everything's taught through like personal like personal testimonies. So they're teaching the class. We have a good curriculum, but they're teaching it through their personal experiences. And they break out in those groups and they kind of contrast their life to life in the way that kind of a very intentional, calibrated life. And we kind of have them do processes to contrast their life. And they come to some self-conclusions, which is the most important ones to come to. Become the kind of your own conclusions of how you can the problem, really taking responsibility, like Larry said, owning the situation, not being a victim, like I went to Iraq, Afghanistan, so I'm entitled to VA care. I'm entitled to all these things, which, they're entitled to some things, but entitlement is never helpful. It's taking personal responsibility, deciding to get well, and make some intentional steps to recalibrate your life. And we give them the tools to do that. While they're there, though, we have a lot of fun too. It's not part of the program. We're not doing like equine therapy, but they'll do things like ride horses, four-wheelers, kayak, because we're getting so deep and it's so intense that we have to break it up and have some fun. And veterans like that fun. So we cause a ruckus and have a good time while we're out there too.
And pizza rolls. No, that's just like
the food's amazing. All 5 of our ranches, we have just amazing like chefs that come in. I mean, they'll easily gain 10 pounds in a week. We overdo it, but it's they deserve it.
Gonna get rid of that 6-pack, Chrissie. You can't go.
Yeah, happy pounds. Yeah.
We don't want to get rid of your 6-pack, Chrissie. You can't go.
Oh no. Right.
Yes. Can't do it.
This is great. And it sounds too good to be true, Chad, that this all is something that you offer for free for veterans. They just have to reach out.
Our budget for the year, we spend about $3.5 million a year doing this. And honestly, it's done not because of me. It's done because of just we have such an amazing, grateful nation of Americans who believe in programs like ours. And through individual donors, we have people support. So while it's free to them, it's not free to us. So if anybody out there listening wants to help, it costs us about $2,500 to put a veteran through, and you could donate any amount at the same website, mightyoaksprograms.org, and that's how we make it happen. We have such amazing people that really care about. And speaking of veterans, they care about you, and they want to make sure you're healthy and well, and getting back in your communities and doing things that like Larry said, contributing back in your communities through and giving back.
I'm selfish. I don't just care about you. I need you. It's both. I'm selfish. I both care about you and I need you in my community. So it's two sides, whatever you want to call that. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. It's about just like putting down, like there's no need to be carrying around more of a burden, more of a weight on you than you absolutely need to. And so you can take your own life back and have more control over it instead of letting the grief or the PTSD or what you've been through be the thing that controls your life and makes your choices for you.
And we really also give them a lot of opportunity, the graduates of our program, to pay it forward and have some kind of everybody. If you look at veterans, these issues that we're talking about today, what most people do, and I'm thankful they do it, but it kind of becomes annoying at the same time to me. They do a lot of awareness. Everybody talks about the problem. 22 suicides a day, and people talk about the problem. It's like, okay, we know there's a problem, but there's a solution too. Let's talk about the solutions.
Yes, absolutely.
We really try to help equip these guys to be able to talk about not just the problem, but the solution, and help pay it forward to the community that they're part of. They're struggling.
Yeah, without question. The nonprofits I've worked with, I've never charged them.
Yeah,
I've never charged them. I charge my corporate clients lots of money. but the nonprofits I haven't charged them. I've just given the sessions and the class for free because you're right. We want to play it forward. We do. There's no doubt. We want to make sure that they're doing it because, again, I'm guilty. I look at my communities. How am I going to rebuild my communities? How am I going to rebuild the country? How are you going to rebuild the state? How are you going to rebuild if you don't have enough people who've been through it, have fallen down, have gotten back up, so know how to deal with adversity? And more importantly, not only have mentor others through adversity that's going to happen in their lives. Yeah. We need more people to do that, to be able to mentor people through adversity so that we can all be successful. You got to fail your way to success. That's how it works.
Look at Joe Biden. Yeah.
That's actually true.
47 years. Yeah. 47 years and he finally got there.
I'm going to give people credit where credit is due. Joe Biden didn't quit. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
That guy did not quit. I will give him that 100% props to not quitting, Joe. I'll give you props.
I don't know that he knows that, but.
No, he doesn't know where he is right now. Chad, other than mightyoaksprograms.org, where can people find you, follow you, support this program, get more information?
Yeah. Everything's on mightyoaksprograms.org. I have a website, chadrobichaux.com. And, for my speaking, I do a lot of speaking events. And like Larry said, I charge a lot for my speaking events. And the reason I do it is so I could charge free for the veterans. I speak most of my speaking events are speaking on basis, and I do that for free.
Absolutely.
But you can find all my books on Amazon. And Unfair Advantage, the one we're talking about, is on Amazon. And if you search me, Chad Robichaux, and all social media platforms, I'm there as well. Most active on Instagram. So
I love it.
Although I'm shadow banned right now, but
ooh, everybody who's anybody is shadow banned right now.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Yes.
Larry Sharpe, where can people find you, follow you, check out what you're doing?
The Sharpe Way. I'm on all the internet things: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Look for The Sharpe Way. I do my show almost every day, 7 p.m. Eastern, live for an hour or two. You've been on it more than once, Chrissie.
It's the best show.
So absolutely, that's what I do.
The best show,
and it's Sharpe with an E, and the E stands for entertaining.
Oh, I thought it stood for erection.
I like that too. Any E you want, I'm good. Entertaining, electable, enticing. Yeah. Oh, good. Yes.
Exciting. Yay.
Yes. All
Sorry.
good.
I didn't mean to make it gross at the end there. Guys, this was great. Thank you so much both for coming on. The passion and care that you have for veterans is so, anyone who's listening to this knows that you guys are the real deal and you're not just full of it. And there are resources, there are places to go to. It doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to do it alone. Check out the books. You have another one coming up.
Keep doing what you're doing, brother. Keep doing it, man. Keep doing it.
This is great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate being on.
Bye. Have a good one.